So I am Tony Scinta. I am the Executive Vice Provost at Nevada State College. And for undergrad, I attended the University at Buffalo, also known as SUNY Buffalo, which is where I grew up in the frigid confines of Buffalo, New York. And then for grad school, I went to UCLA because I was committed to going anywhere that was warm weather once I got to that level. You know, I don't even know if I knew why I was going to college. I think it was just, for me, the one good fortune I had is I was first generation, but there was kind of an expectation and support to go to college even from when I was little. And I was sort of a nerd in school. I liked school. I always had my head buried in a book. It was a Stephen King book or something along those lines. You know, it wasn't one of our great historical works of literature, but I was always into school, and so even though I wasn't even exactly sure what I was going to study, I knew I was going to go to college. You know, it's interesting how these things are complicated, because on the one hand, they were very supportive of me going to college, and that was integral to my success, that I at least had their emotional support. I couldn't really have a lot of instrumental support. They didn't have money to support me with. They didn't have experience to support me with because they had never been to college other than one semester. But emotionally they were supportive. But I say it's complicated because, you know, at some point in college, I was about halfway through, I had made a big investment, I was working hard, I was doing pretty well. My father had asked me if I was interested in a government job, and I think he was worried about my security, essentially. It's like I had a major that wasn't one of those majors that necessarily leads to a guaranteed job in that field, and he was sufficiently worried that he was asking me about a government job where he knew I would get solid pay and solid benefits. And you know, I understood where he was coming from, but it was a little bit tough for me because it wasn't the dream. I am honoring what my family did to set the stage for me to go to college, because they couldn't do it themselves. And I feel like I am at the other end, hopefully paving a better road for my children to be second generation college students. And that's really how I see college. It's not just an individual. I see it as the whole family tree and how that is impacted and is required in order to have these success stories. Yeah, they changed multiple times. I really was adrift, and I didn't know exactly what I was doing. And what I've learned is that it's okay to not know what you're doing as long as you persevere. At least that's been my personal experience. So I started thinking I was going to be an engineer. And I did pretty well in engineering, but I didn't enjoy it. And so I changed my major. But then from there, I literally didn't know I was going to grad school for certain until the minutes before I had to make my decision about going to grad school. I literally bandied it about and hemmed and hawed and went back and forth until finally someone at UCLA was like, "We need a decision, man. You got, what are you going to do? Just tell us what you're going to do." And I said, "Okay, I'm coming. I'm going to graduate school." And even then, going into graduate school, I thought I was going to be a researcher. You know, I liked research. I liked the idea behind research. I liked that way of thinking. But I just happened to have a teaching experience early on in grad school, and it so invigorated me that I knew that was the pathway I needed to be on, a professor who's balancing research and teaching. So it was a lot of trying things. I mean, that's one of my lessons, and this might be a question coming up, but I did a lot of exploration to figure out what might work best, and what I thought would be best was really different than what I learned would be best. I think one of the biggest challenges, I didn't know how anything worked, and it's a dramatic difference from high school in some ways. I mean, it's similar in some ways. You're still learning, you're still applying yourself, but it's also different in some ways because there's more autonomy for you as a student, and you just kind of figure things out. There's more responsibility in your shoulders because no one is pushing you necessarily to get certain things done or to sign up for courses on time. And so I had to really figure out how college worked in terms of course registration and the resources that were available to me. And financial aid, which was totally mystifying, but I did some of it because it was integral to me succeeding and not having to overburden myself with a full-time job. I was able to work part-time, have some financial aid, and then eventually pay off my loans. But so much of it was just, it's that college literacy. It's figuring it out because I didn't have anyone in my family to turn to who could tell me this is how it works or this is what I would recommend. And I leaned a lot on professors, advisors, fellow students who had figured it out to chart my path. So the first part of the answer is I did not feel comfortable going to seek help at first because I mistakenly thought that everyone else had figured it out and they weren't asking these questions or doing these things because they knew better. And the reality is they were all just doing the same thing I was. They were looking at me and I looked like I knew what was going on. And you know, I didn't want to do things that somehow betrayed a lack of understanding, right? I'd give away that I didn't really know what I was doing because in high school, I knew what I was doing. I was a pretty good student in high school. But ultimately, I just kind of mustered the courage to go meet those professors who seemed a little more friendly in the classroom. And then once I did it, all the barriers came down. I realized, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, they're here to help me. In some cases, they might even have been bored if I weren't there to ask questions and talk about the stuff that they dedicated their whole lives to. And so I just pushed myself. I mean, no one told me, oh, you have to go, you know, to office hours or you have to go meet with your faculty. I just ultimately decided to take the plunge and do it. And it was one of those things, like so many other things, like riding a roller coaster where you think it's going to be the end of your life and it's the scariest thing that's ever could possibly happen. And then I did it and I was like, that was not a big deal at all. I should have started doing that, you know, a year and a half ago. So that's kind of, you know, how I broke through. And then I really got involved. I worked for the student newspaper. I did a lot of internships. I met a lot of people. And, you know, the whole experience was just less scary, first of all. It was less scary once I got more involved, but it also was more fun once I got more involved. And I really think that not only did my social life and just my attachment to the college benefit, but I actually think it made the learning part of it more enjoyable because I had people to study with and I had people to commiserate with, and you know, I'm glad I took that plunge. I mean, I think the biggest part, and we see this day in and day out with our peer support specialists on this campus, from writing specialists to tutors to peer mentors, is that there's so much more confidence that comes from hearing that a student like you figured it out and made it than, say, me as a administrator or campus leader telling students, this is what you need to do, you can make it. I mean, I believe it. I believe it to the core of my being. It's in my DNA that students can accomplish it, they can make it, they can succeed if they do things a certain way. But it's so much more meaningful, incredible, and ultimately impactful if they hear it from another student who's like, I was you. You know, I was you, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know how all this stuff worked. And this is what I did, and here I am now, ready to make it. And that's really where a lot of the power is. First advice is get a lot of advice. And that might sound like a cop-out to a degree, but this is a campus where people are here invested in student success. That's our number one priority. That's not true of every campus. Some campuses, like the ones I went to, actually were really more about research, and that's what the faculty did. Like, their number one priority had to be about research. Here, the number one priority of people on this campus absolutely should be student success and you should take advantage of that. One of the things that really bums me out is if a student comes to this campus and doesn't take advantage of what we have to offer in terms of the people here to give you advice and provide support and help you succeed. So that's one of the big things. I mean, another piece of advice, and you probably hear this from lots of folks, and it's a cliche, but it's true. It's virtually everyone is confused. Virtually everyone has setbacks. I remember I took calculus for the first time, and my performance was nowhere near what I had done at the high school level. And it was kind of devastating. It was just one course, but it was kind of devastating. And I'm glad that I had enough encouragement to just keep going and keep persisting. And that's nowhere near the kind of challenge that a lot of folks will face. They're going to be much bigger challenge than that, but a college degree is worth it. It's worth it for you. It's worth it for your family. It's worth it for society. And so I think that second piece of advice is everyone's going to have tough challenges, and the key to it is how you respond to that challenge. And we're here to help you through those challenges. You don't have to do it entirely on your own. So use us, use these resources. These people are here to help, and keep going.
Whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Tony Scinta. I am the Executive Vice Provost at Nevada State College, and I am thrilled to celebrate First Gen, and I am Nepala.